Let's get moving.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So, here's a movie pitch for you. A conversation between a demonically possessed death row inmate and a liberal atheist psychiatrist that has been tasked with determining whether or not he is sane and competent to be executed. The whole movie takes place in the prison. Both of the actors are pretty good, but largely unknown, and it will cover topics like abortion, euthanasia, slavery, hate speech, stuff like that. Its main strength is basically its monologues by like a demonic entity condemning the unethical illusion of modern liberal policy. In fact, like, one of the most chilling parts of the movie is where, like, the possessed death row inmate, the demonic entity controlling the death row inmate, rejoices at the precise moment the main character's girlfriend has an abortion. Like, it's a pretty excellent movie. It's like, it's got no action in it, no real violence. It all pretty much takes place inside the prison. It's all pretty much dialogue. All it is like a brutally honest dialogue about like the illusion of goodness behind every semi-corrupt liberal aspect of society these days that basically tricks you into committing evil. Honestly guys, if your taste is anything like mine, stop watching this like right now. Turn on your PS5, download the Tubi app, search Nefarious on Tubi and go and watch it. Particularly if you're a Christian, and especially if you're like a atheist or agnostic on the fence. It's a completely free movie. And yeah, it's just incredibly well written, pretty good dialogue, very good monologues from the demon condemning current liberal society. It's just worth it. It's just worth a view. I don't think it ever got a proper release in Australia, which is surprising to me given like its quality, but also not so surprising given the left wing and Hollywood in general dabbling with, you know, satanic ideology, and obviously the government's in charge with evil and deceptive policy. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all to find out that this movie, which like seems to be like a critique on most of the current mainstream liberal left wing and its policy, was actually censored and gatekept by, you know, probably semi-satanist left wing, probably pedo gatekeepers, like a lot of, you know, media is. Anyway, if what I've said intrigues you, go watch it. It's free. It's worth it for the novelty of it alone. It's very unique, has good performances and great dialogue. So, spoiler warning for the movie. I'm just going to break down a couple of different aspects and like discuss them within, you know, current popular culture. So, just warning, spoilers ahead. So the demonic entity throughout the conversation accuses the psychiatrist throughout the movie of, before the end of the day, he's going to conduct 3 murders, right? Or condemn 3 people to death, which is like basically the same thing. It's obviously meant to be like a mocking of the Holy Trinity, a demonic mocking of the Holy Trinity. But 2 of the 3 deaths are, you know, direct critiques on arguably demonic mainstream liberal positions. The first of the 2 is euthanasia. Like, it obviously being, you know, considered a compassionate way to end someone's life who is suffering. This is pretty much exclusively a liberal position, but it's, you know, largely ignored or uncontested by the Christian right. Largely because if you adopt the anti-position, it easily looks as if you're, you know, advocating suffering, right? Advocating pointless suffering. But its real-world implications and motivations get, like, extremely muddy when you factor them in. Like, when you consider aspects of it, like, you know, mental health, social health care, the incentives of the individuals providing the services, and their incentivization, you know, through taxpayer money and subsidy. And you've also got the aspect of that, which is consent when it comes to taxpayer subsidy for, you know, political, what would you say, policies and the implementation of political policies. If we're following the logic of the movie, the whole movie being about whether or not a insane person can be held legally liable for their actions and thus executed, then the same applies to euthanasia, right? If we're following the logic of the movie, then a mentally ill individual cannot consent to execution, suicide, etc. Into that, we've also got to lump the fact that it is considered a medical treatment or medical assistance in dying in Canada. So we'll lump medical consent in there as well. Whether or not a mentally ill person can consent to, you know, medical treatment. This obviously applies to trans people, but I'll just mention that in passing. I won't dig into it too much. And obviously, talking about medical consent, we have to talk about other things like, you know, the Nazi medical experiments in Unit 731 in Imperial Japan. And the coercing state, obviously, any state can't be trusted to, you know, force or coerce you into a medical treatment. It's been obvious since these examples. After these examples, it was codified into the Nuremberg Code, like, obviously, after these things happened, because they were so absolutely fucking horrible, and it was obvious that we shouldn't fucking repeat those mistakes. So, in addition to those, it's basically slippery slopes and aspects of euthanasia that apply to them. Next, consider like the political and social healthcare implications. The idea that public services provided by the taxpayer are, in quotes, overburdened by the sick. Let's not look at, you know, the retirement pensions of politicians when we say that, or the misappropriation of tax revenue either. That's getting absolutely wasted. on both, like foreign wars and aid to states that are run by straight up terrorist organizations that gets taxed and seized. But like the general idea is, since these services are public and are for you, you have a sort of a reciprocal duty to also look after for these services for yourself and for others. Let's call it an assumed liberal duty. This liberal duty, obviously, it absolutely ignores the fact that you've already directly paid for these services with the tax revenue you supplied throughout your entire working life. And also the fact that no politician, arbitrarily has the right to remove these services from you, as was attempted by the more, totalitarian left during the previous pandemic. Funny how the authoritarian left acts as if, tax revenue is just there, it's infinite, it sprouts from nowhere, has no strings attached to it. And in addition to that, they also never miss a chance to, strip whatever rights and property rights you have as an individual. It's pretty funny how the left always does that with every single policy. In this instance, obviously the tax revenue you directly invested would be your property that they are attempting to strip you from. But let's also consider the cost incentives for these services, these government services. It's not a private service. The bonuses, let's say, for managerial classes that save money and therefore are granted bonuses. These are also just sort of straight up unethical due to the whole taxpayer pool of money. This is drawn in fact from the public, i.e. not a consenting customer in a free market exchange, but a captive customer in a government monopoly, which makes it, when it gets corrupted, all the much fucking worse. It's just straight up robbery. But it's also an issue that this is essentially a government subsidized monopoly, right? That's heavily regulated in addition to that. So that pretty much ensures no proper, free market private competitor is going to come up. Just, due to the sheer amount of government gatekeeping there. And when you consider all these issues, it makes euthanasia seem much greater, and it makes the demon's points in Nefarious, where it's just, straight up murder, and the motive of the individual hit that much harder, in my opinion. It can change your opinion on it, on that liberal position. That gets even greyer in, the current, insane liberal states where Canada, is just straight up offering, euthanasia, or what's it called, medical assistance in dying to, just straight up mentally ill people. The very people, by this movie's logic, that the death penalty cannot apply to since they are unfit of mind and unfit to be judged by their own actions. But, what is, commie liberalism without some, internal contradictions? And finally, we get to the, the individual entrepreneurs providing the services for euthanasia. That gets even fucking weirder. There's a video of, what's his name, Count Dankula, reviewing, the case around the Swedish man who created the suicide pod, and how allegedly all fucking weird that got. Apparently, the suicide pod, you're meant to just go into it, and it's just meant to feed you nitrogen, sort of how they kill animals in labs and stuff. If you've ever seen the movie, what was it, Andromeda Strain? There's a scene in that where they infect a monkey with the Andromeda strain, and they have to kill it, and so they put it in this little gas chamber, and they gas it with nitrogen, and it sort of twitches, and it's a fucking horrible scene. But that's sort of the idea behind what this suicide pod was. It's sort of a way to euthanize yourself according to those principles. But like, apparently it didn't work properly. Allegedly, it didn't work properly, I should say. I'm not completely read up on all the familiars. I've just seen Count Dankula review the Suicide Pod and what happened with it. And apparently it didn't work properly, and the woman who used it was found with like strangle marks and ligature marks around her neck or something, like allegedly. So it looks like it didn't work properly. She sort of survived or was left super fucked up, and he was forced to finish her off with like strangulation, which is like absolutely fucking horrible. Like, that's just, you know, if you weren't trying to do this euthanasia shit in the first place, like, that wouldn't have happened. Like, that's, you know, new territory, which is just completely fucked. But yeah, so you get into this really weird grey place where you're, in the name of social health, robbing taxpayers of their money to essentially incentivize entrepreneurs to experimentally murder people. And yes, that's as fucking absolutely retarded as it sounds, absolutely as predictably bad as it sounds. I mean, we're very experimental as a species, but we also fuck up quite a bit. Even exploring that idea is going to lead to horrible suffering and just fucked up outcomes. Anyway, moving on, like, obviously, given that we have to seriously consider the motives of anyone involved. But anyway, moving on to like the second death the demon accuses him of being responsible for, it's his girlfriend's abortion. And this is another one of those arguments that will split the audience, especially when you have like a literal demon in the movie advocating for it and rejoicing and saying hell is rejoicing the moment it happens. It's just this absolutely chilling, horrible monologue, like, in the movie. It's worth seeing. It's like really quite a powerful moment in film, which sadly has just been completely lost, likely because of, you know, liberal gatekeeping and bias, just not giving the movie this like wide, deserving release it should have got in Australia. The accusation obviously coming from the fictional demon who's just like ecstatic about it, and it just hits with this, you know, horrible truth that's just missing in a lot of fiction these days. Like, to add real world context to the discussion, I have to point out, like, I'm biased here. I am pro-life. I'm anti-promiscuity. I'll make the case both verbally and visually. Why? Like, firstly, I just don't trust this liberal, centralized, like, media industrial complex, or this globalist society it's attempting, and its values that it's like attempting to unsuccessfully shape at the moment, that everyone's sort of rejecting, but it's like trying to do this like throughout a ton of different aspects of society, including art, and policy, etc. But like, at this point, like, I distrust that complex, that media complex, so much. Like, if they told me the sky was blue, I'd fucking check the cunt to see if they were lying or not. But like, if their endorsement of late-term abortion is like not enough for you, like, and it should be, like, you should reject pretty much all of their ideas. All of their ideas are absolutely fucking horrible, and pushing towards like totalitarianism. But we can consider like the other arguments too, like at conception it's new DNA, it's literally a new person then, it's not the DNA of the mother or father. If left naturally to grow, it will become a human. There is a presumption of consent for having the baby, just inherently tied up in the process of sex. Like, that is what the process is for. It's also why I'm like against the feminist liberation promiscuity idea. I think that's fucking absolutely terrible, and I think it has absolutely destroyed the family unit in society. which is like a fucking awful idea. I've even got like a rough script in me head at the moment, like comparing like the dystopia from the book Brave New World, the Aldous Huxley novel, which is like a classic in dystopian fiction, and comparing that to just, dating app culture and the whole culture of that, and pornography in general, like the effects of all that on people, and the family unit and the idea behind it. Anyway, so at conception, it's new DNA. It's outright a new person. Genetically, can't really argue that point. Is it technically alive? Like, heartbeat's pretty hard to detect. It was originally thought to be 8 weeks, but now it's like semi-confirmed it can be much, much sooner. It can be as much as like 5 weeks. Like, so the horrible reality of abortion is, by the time you've detected the heartbeat, you will likely only have just realized you were pregnant. So, like, you're pretty much always killing a baby at that point. You're definitionally killing a baby, like stopping its heartbeat. So, like, thus morally responsible for stopping the heartbeat of a baby, which is like, definitionally murder. It's pretty fucking horrible. Like, a lot of the arguments, like that are pro-abortion try to, like, semantically just avoid that fact by calling it like a clump of cells, or not conscious and not able to feel pain and all this sort of shit. Those separate things can be semi-disregarded. Like, clump of cells, okay, I guess it's also an alternate but less complete definition. Not conscious, you're still not allowed to murder people who are sleeping, and unable to feel pain. At a certain point during late-term abortion, which they also argue for, it is in fact able to feel pain, and you wouldn't justify the murder of someone just because they're unable to feel pain. It's sort of like a prophylactic argument, trying to make like a preemptive care argument about the baby doesn't feel pain, so therefore it's okay in terms of care to kill it. Like, it's this horrible sort of fucking argument. But no, it's new DNA, has its own heartbeat, left to its natural processes that you inherently consented to with sex, will become a baby. In the cases of rape and incest, obviously, like, the party hasn't consented. Like, some individuals feel that a baby is, like, innocent regardless of rape or incest. I don't know, it's grey for me, like, this area. There's something horrible about forcing, like, a mother to bear a rape baby, or a brother or father incest rape baby. Like, there's something inherently horrible about permitting the state to do that. In my opinion, rape laws aren't hard enough. These people should be ended, like, painfully and quickly. But again, the tolerant liberals will side with the criminals, just like they side with, Hamas scum and Palestinians, just like how they side with, criminal, illegal migrants that, in certain cases have been convicted of, actual rape and murder. And then they will just, obviously release them, like Australia released, like, 355. And just how they will, automatically side with queer theorists and trans activists that are trying to destroy free speech, and how they, by process, also side with minor attracted people and pedophilia, because, they're trying to disrupt all the norms. Absolutely fucked. I suppose, like, a criticism of my position could be, like, it's an argument, it's a naturalistic fallacy. I'm arguing that the natural process is correct because it's what happens, and it's like sort of the process you consent to. I guess you could argue that it's an appeal to nature or natural processes, by me saying that sex is, naturally used to create a baby, and that after conception, and if left to its natural processes, a baby will be born. I guess. Like, but like, the flip side of that is, in nature, like bears and stuff, they eat their young if there's not enough food for the young, so that argument can apply to both sides, I guess. Yeah. I don't buy it. I think it's a bad argument. Also, you know, it's pretty disgusting using like that sort of argument where the poetry of it is it's a mother betraying and killing its own young. It's just like horrible, and especially with like late-term abortion, it becomes directly that. It's like visually and undeniably that. Like, go onto Billboard Chris's Twitter, scroll down until you find the quote-unquote medical waste after late-term abortion. It is straight up ripping a baby apart in the womb. Like, the left are sick for, like, advocating this position at all. They're just completely morally bankrupt. And, like, these are the same people that will defend Hamas-governed Palestinians. These are the same people that, like, screeched about bombed babies, like, in Palestine, while trying to advocate for a ceasefire that allows Hamas to, you know, directly and predictably target civilians in the, like, future, like, potentially unlimited number of civilians in the future. Both Jews and Palestinian dissidents, I might add, because they do target their own people as well. It's fucking ridiculous. But, like, in addition to that, okay, so the final death in the movie isn't exclusively liberal. It's just basically an argument about the death penalty. The death penalty is arguably more right-wing, granting the state the right to execute an individual of a heinous crime. It's like, I would argue it's more superficially right-wing, and I might add, since pretty much every communist country in World War II had, like, summary executioners books and used it, like, a ton. Like, technically both wings have used it. Yeah. The argument is, though, like, granting the state the ability to perform the death penalty. It's basically the same issue with granting the state control of speech, control of guns, and self-defense. The state's basically made up of, like, arguably the most unethical and evil people there are. They're vastly overrepresented on the Dark Tetrad and Dark Triad. Like, would you give a board made up of these, like, scummy individuals the power to execute someone with, like, little or potentially corrupt regulation and oversight? Like, on the flip side of that decision, I guess you also have, like, excessively liberal individuals and policy that seeks to be, like, extremely tolerant of, like, the worst possible crimes, such as the normalization of pedophilia, the leniency for murder and assault, and not just in, like, in one's own native country as well, but, like, imported through, you know, mass immigration from other countries, and, like, inflicting them on, like, native populations, like that whole deal, while calling an individual obviously a bigot or a racist if they complain, like, up to the point of, like, imprisoning individuals. And if, like, the UK is an example, like, at a certain point, like, a theoretical critical mass of criminals will be reached in that society where, you know, law and order and authority sort of break down, the criminals become their own sort of lobbying group, and seize an amount of authority compelled by force for themselves. Like, that would be criminal-run gulags and stuff in the Soviet Union. And I guess sort of extrajudicial killings in Islam, sort of, kind of. Basically, property rights and rights are abandoned, basically. So the movie, among other things, just was awesome. It delivers, like, a series of vicious, like, monologues, which are brilliant, delivered by quite a good and underrated actor. And it just acts as, like, a political warning to atheistic liberalism and atheistic liberal policies. Much the same manner as 1984 did with the surveillance state. It's just clearly worth a watch. It's just a unique and fresh movie that's just been horribly unjustly overlooked.
Slimy fuck!